5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I think we're just gonna have to work with this. Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome back to the TBR Diaries. I hope you're doing good. It's been months, but I'm currently filming a reading vlog in which I vaguely address the fact that it's been months and give you a little update, so stay tuned for that because I'm not going to tell you again, it's not that interesting. But hello, today I'm doing a TBR video because it's a classic Sylvie TBR Diaries video. The clue is in the name. Today, as this video goes live, hopefully, if I edit on time, is the 23rd of September. It is the autumn equinox, and so I'm going to do a little seasonal TBR to see me through until the winter solstice. So this is my autumnal TBR. I'm trying to keep it short and realistic, which is not my strong suit. I tend toward long and rambly and something I'm going to promptly ignore as soon as I've turned the camera off, but we're trying something new. So I have a reasonably short list of books in this TBR, and I don't actually physically have all of them with me. One of them isn't out yet, but several of them are just in boxes in my house and I'm not sure which one and didn't feel like searching for them. So I'm gonna, chuck a picture of, you know the drill, when those come up. But yeah, I have recently moved, which I don't know if you can tell from the background because it's just a wall. But anyway, let's get into it. So I have split this TBR into a few different subsections because I do love to categorize and classify. It's what my entire dissertation was just on. That is a whole different story. Anyway, in the first little section of this autumn TBR is books that I feel in my soul are seasonally appropriate. The weather is getting darker, the weather is getting colder. From this point on, the nights are longer than the days. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the one I don't have in my hands because it's in a mystery box. And that is The Body Keeps the Score. I have no idea off the top of my head who the author is, but I'll, do the thing. Because I feel like this season is the season for, shadow work. And The Body Keeps the Score is basically about how it's a non-fiction, how trauma is kind of stored in the body and the connection between physicality and the mind and all that stuff. And I feel like it's something I need to read because I have had a very not traumatizing year, but I have been feeling the trauma of previous years and previous events. It's been a rough year and I feel like this book would maybe be beneficial to me. And I've heard very good things about it from all different corners of the internet, on BookTube and just generally in other spaces online. I don't know. Anyway, so that's my first book. It's the only non-fiction on this list. I'm being really brave by reading a non-fiction book after completing a master's degree this year. I've read so much non-fiction. We'll see how it goes. I've got really used to reading short, snappy articles, and I don't know how I'm going to fare with an entire book about non-fiction, but we will see. But that is the first book on my list. And the next three, I actually miraculously have all of them. And these are fiction that I just feel is seasonally appropriate for the autumn, for spooky season, for the short days, dark nights, etc. And the first one of those is The Archive of the Forgotten by A.J. Hackwith. This is the sequel to The Library of the Unwritten. And this is the second book in Hell's Library series. So I was like, hell, that's demony, that's Halloweeny. Also, I just really want to read it. I read the first book, what is this? I read the first book almost a year ago, over a year ago now actually, and it was one where I finished it. As I was reading it, I was like, yeah, this is good, but I don't know that I love it. I don't know that I'm obsessed. I don't know if I'll continue with the series, and that's kind of how I felt when I finished it. I enjoyed it, it was good, but I wasn't compelled to continue. But then it's one that's just stuck in my brain and that I've kind of kept thinking about since I read it. Oh no, I actually do want to go back and see what happens. I'm curious. So I saw this in a bookshop finally because this is one that I wasn't dying to read, so I didn't make a special effort to order it from somewhere, but I was kind of waiting to come across in a bookshop, and then I finally did a few weeks ago. I went to visit my friend in Edinburgh, and from the sticker on the back of this I can tell that I got this from Blackwell's in Edinburgh. Finally saw it in store, so I was like, yes, I'll take it as a sign, I'll pick it up, I'll buy it, and hopefully, no, I will read it in this little reading season that I have coming up. So this is the first one. I feel like I should tell you about the books. I feel like that is the point of BookTube. So the first book, Library of the Unwritten, I feel like it's very popular and I don't need to tell you. It is set in Hell's Library, where kind of unwritten books go to die. One of the characters from one of these books comes to life, travels somehow to Earth and starts like causing havoc, and then our little cast of characters has to go through, like, there's hell, there's earth, they go to, the name escapes me, but the like Norse mythology afterlife. They do a little travel through several afterlives, I think. It was very cool, it's very interesting. And I am intrigued to see what happens with the events of the end of the first book. Certain people are in very different positions from where we met them, and I just want to see where it goes, so it's on the list. It is The Hollow Places by TJ Kingfisher. This is a book I bought a little while back, maybe somewhere between a year and 2 years ago. I was going on a little bit of a horror book buying spree because I want to find my like preferred niches and sub-genres in horror and like horror adjacent books. I think this is going to be more sort of the spooky, creepy, atmospheric, things going bump in the night kind of a vibe than like what I think of as more like traditional in your face at the forefront like horror tropes and ideas, but we will see. So in this we follow Kara, who is freshly divorced, living back at home, and finds a mysterious bunker behind a hole in the wall of her uncle's house. And it talks about portals to alternative realities. It talks about being haunted, so I don't know if that's in the literal sense like ghosts, or if it's more like a haunted energy or some shit, I don't know. But I am intrigued to see where this is going to go. This will be the first book I've read by T. Kingfisher. Have I been calling them TJ Kingfisher? That's not their name, they're just T. Kingfisher. And I've seen several books by this author. I think it's a pen name, potentially. I'm not sure who it is or what else they've written. I've seen several books by them that really intrigued me, and I think this is the first one I will have read, so hopefully I'll get on with it and I can dive into that other work. But this is my like spooky horror type book on this TBR. And then the last book in my sort of seasonally appropriate subsection of this TBR is Babel by R.F. Kuang. No, I still haven't finished the Poppy War trilogy by the same author. That is not the point. This is dark academia, and surely autumn is the season for dark academia. I feel like it's when it thrives. This is set in Oxford in 1836, and Babel, I don't think it's the biblical Babel, but Babel is Oxford University's Royal Institute of Translation. And our main character, Robin Swift, thought Babel a paradise until it became a prison. So I think it's about language and translation and empire and standing against that, potentially. I think this is also a bit of a response to a lot of the criticisms against dark academia have been that it's very like upholding white empire and colonialism and that kind of thing. And I think this is in part an attempt to counter that. I'm very intrigued for several reasons. The one book I have read by R.F. Kuang is The Poppy War. Like I say, I haven't finished the trilogy yet, but I did really like that book. So I know I'm going to get on with the writing, and I want to get to this soon, because otherwise I know this is going to be a book that I bought, like I pre-ordered this, I got it when it came out, and if I don't read it imminently, it's going to sit on my shelf for years, because dark academia is one of those subgenres that I'm not wild about. Like, it's not one of the things that I gravitate towards, so if I don't read it soon, it's just going to sit there for years to come. But I have very high hopes, and also this is a book that's been super popular, so although I don't really care about spoilers, I don't want to know the entire plot of the book before I get to reading it. So that's Babel. Okay, so next up I have a couple of fantasy books. We all know that I read fantasy all year round. It's my favourite genre, but autumn does just feel like a very high fantasy kind of time, especially the kind of medieval type fantasy just feels very autumnal to me. So on that note, I will be reading The Golden Fool, and I plan to finish this whole trilogy. Actually, both these books were on my series I want to read this year TBR, but who was she? Who did she think she was? Anyway, this is the second book in the Tawnyman trilogy, which is the third trilogy in Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series. What is there to say about these books? They always make me cry, especially the Fitz books, which this is. This is a sad boy Fitz book. I did read the first book earlier in the year. I kind of don't remember oh no, I do remember one thing that happened that made me very sad, but I don't remember exactly what happened. But I think it was a lot of setup. Robin Hobb's books are very slow in a way that I really enjoy. It feels very like, this sounds stupid, it feels like you're being told a story. No shit. But it does just feel very kind of, what's the word? Not luxurious, but like indulgent in a way. I don't know, there's just something about like a big chunky fantasy book that is quite slow paced that I enjoy. Like I say, I can't really tell you too much because it is the second book in a series. Yeah, that's really it. It has some of my favourite characters. It's going to be cozy in a way that will almost definitely absolutely make me cry at least one point, and I'm looking forward to that experience. So yes, and the other like high fantasy book on my Autumn TBR is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is the gorgeous broken binding book box edition. This is the first book in the first Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. It's grimdark fantasy. I think he was the like, I don't want to say the first one because I don't know, but he definitely popularized the like grimdark fantasy subgenre, which I don't think is something I've really explored. I read the first couple of Game of Thrones books, which I think probably fall under the grimdark umbrella, but I just haven't really read a lot of it, so that'll be interesting. I've heard the characters in this series are excellent. I think that's one of the things that people really love about Joe Abercrombie's writing in general. The vibe I get from the way that people talk about these characters is that they are all bastards and out for themselves, and then like we're just rolling with that throughout the book. And something I really come to appreciate in my recent reread of the Locked Tomb trilogy. I'm now reading None of the Ninth. I'm loving it, obviously. That's not what this is about. But I really love a like unreliable, kind of not even morally grey, just like you have no idea what's going on, like narrator, main character. So if that's the kind of energy that we're going to get from these characters, I will be obsessed. I don't know if that's true. That's just something I'm putting together in my brain, which could very easily be wrong. But either way, I'm excited to read this series. This book isn't as chunky as I thought it was, which is always reassuring. 420, 430 pages, but that's not that bad for fantasy. I do have the whole trilogy. Of course, in the back of my mind, the whole trilogy is on this Autumn TBR, but I'm being realistic. I'm just talking about the first one. I am really excited to be getting to some Joe Abercrombie because he's for sure one of the like biggest fantasy authors, I think. And I know there's for sure a lot of criticisms to be made about the fact that some of the most, or like the handful of the most popular, well-known fantasy authors are all like, not all, but largely older white men. But I do tend to like what's popular, so I have high hopes, high expectations, and I'm looking forward to it because I think he's got several series out, so if I like this series, there's a lot more to dive into. Okay, I have 2 more books to talk about. I've talked for so long. I have 2 more books to talk about. Neither of them I have physically. And the first one I do own, but again, is in a mystery box in this house, and it is The Second Rebel by Linden A. Lewis? We'll see if I'm right. This is the sequel to The First Sister, which I read at the beginning of this year, at the very end of December last year. I'm not sure, around that time. Absolutely loved it. Immediately bought the sequel, immediately did not read it. So I'm going to be doing that ASAP. What can I tell you that isn't spoilery that I can actually remember? So it's a sci-fi duology. We are in some kind of futuristic setting. The only things I can remember were big reveals at the end. I'm sorry, this is the most useless video I've ever put out. It was really good. There were nuns on a spaceship. There was somebody important. There was cyborgs? Question mark? Or something like cyborgs. There was some kind of like cybernetic element to it, I think. I don't know, but I'm going to read the sequel. I might audiobook it actually because I think I listened to the first one and really enjoyed it. So maybe I'll listen to the sequel. In which case I don't even need to find the book, which is clearly the ideal option. And then the final book that I want to talk about I don't own yet because it isn't out yet. So that one at least is not the fault of my poor packing and absolute lack of catalogue in what I put in which box. Anyway, the final book is Greywaren by Maggien Stiefvater. It is the 3rd book in the, is it called the Dreamer trilogy? Sequel trilogy to the Raven Boys Raven Cycle. I reread the first one and read the second one right at the beginning of this year, I think. Loved them. Love the Raven Cycle. Love the world. Love the characters. I love everything. The Raven Cycle is one of my like comfort series for sure, and I have no doubt that the I think it's called the Dreamer Trilogy. I'm going to call it that, but I have no doubt that it's going to also be a bit of a comfort series. And I need answers. I need to know. It's coming out in October. I haven't pre-ordered it, but I will get it when it comes out and read it, hopefully swiftly. Again, I might audiobook that one because I really like the Raven Cycle audiobooks, narrator, etc. But yeah, and so both these last 2 books that I've talked about are finishing a series, which again feels like appropriate for the autumn time to be finishing off some series, because it's all like endings and transition and blah blah blah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop there. I was gonna say quit while I'm ahead, but I'm not ahead of a single thing. I have no idea what's going on up here. I have no idea what I'm saying. We'll leave it there. But yeah, that's my little autumn TBR. I think that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books, which feels very reasonable. Now that I've done my fucking degree, I actually have the time and the capacity to be reading again. So I think 8 books is very acceptable. Obviously in my head there are more books on this list, but we are not thinking about that. So yeah, let me know what you're planning on reading this autumn. Let me know if you have read any of these books, if they're also on your TBR, all that good stuff. I've forgotten how to finish a video. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. I know that this was very rambly and not super present in the moment, but let's be honest, that's how I've always been. So yes, it's good to be back. It's good to be sat filming. And I will see you in the next one, which hopefully will not be in 6 months' time. But yeah, have a good one. I'll see you next time, etc.